The complete graph of the function f is shown in this picture above, for which value of x is the value of f of x at its minimum. All right, so this is the entire graph. We have a piecewise function broken up into several parts. It starts here, it ends here, no matter what. And the number, so basically, I guess, I don't know, I'm looking at this problem and saying this is way too easy, but maybe they just want you to be careful here. My minimum is at this point right there, which is -3, 2. So my negative 2. So my minimum value is -2, but it occurs when x is -3, and that's what they're asking for. What is the value of x going to be at its minimum? Well, the x value is -3, and the y value, or the f of x value, is going to be -2. So I guess this problem, the trick behind it is they're expecting a lot of people to say that the answer is going to be -2 because, quote, the minimum is -2, which is true, but it happens at -3. So I guess be careful. Okay, we've got ourselves a graph displaying the total cost in C of dollars, renting a boat for H hours. So cost is my y-axis, H is my x-axis. So I don't know if this is even important, but it looks like we have an equation, roughly y equals y-intercept is 5. It looks like my slope is going to be up 1, 2, 3 over 1 over 1. So my slope is 3 over 1. Change that to C equals 3h plus 5. What does the c-intercept represent in the graph? All right, so what does the y-intercept mean in the graph? Well, what it means is for 0 hours, it costs $5 to rent a boat. So essentially, what this is saying is it costs $3 per hour, and for no hours, you pay $5. So the initial cost is $5 no matter what. And it looks like A is going to be our guy right there. Looking at the other options, total number, nope. Total number, nope. The increase, nope. Increase implies slope. It's going to be A. So I didn't need to come up with an equation, but I gave you a little added bonus for fun. Which of the following represents the relationship between h and c? So basically, I need to come up with an equation for this line where it gives you h and c. So let's break it down into much simpler terms. I'm going to pretend that h is x, and I'm going to pretend that c is y. And maybe I'm doing too much by doing this, but I'm breaking it down in simple terms. Okay, I have my y-axis goes up by 1 every single time, but my x-axis goes up by 1/4. It takes all the way up until here to hit 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write slope-intercept form looks like this. I can use a picture like this guy, any line on a coordinate plane I could use to get slope-intercept form. That guy right there, 5, where my line crosses the y-axis, or in this case, the c-axis, that's going to be my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is 5. I can find my slope by picking any 2 points. So let me pick this guy right here and that guy right here. I did a previous problem where I picked 2 different points, so I'm just mixing it up a little bit. I go up 1, 2, 3. So my rise is 3. And of course, it's tempting to go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's over 4, but it's not. Remember, when I go 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm not going over 4. I'm going 1. So my slope is 3 over 1. So y equals 3x plus 5. But remember, the first thing I did with this problem is I said, let's make believe, since h is the x-axis, that x is h, and that y is c. And there's our guy right there. Fun. Functions. So Katerina is a botanist studying the production of pears, blah, 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 blah. She noticed that type A trees produce 20% more pears than type B trees did. Based on Katerina's observation, if type A trees produced 144 pears, how many pears did type B trees produce? So type A trees, so we'll just say that A trees is going to be B trees plus 20% more than those B trees. So A is B plus 20% of B, which is 0.2 B, or not 0.2 B, which is 1.2 B. Now, what else do I know? I know that type A trees produced, I already did that. Type A trees produce 144. So let's do it this way. I'm going to turn 1.2 into a fraction, which is going to be 6 over 5. Oh, I kind of wish I didn't do that. Oh, well, too late. No, I don't. I like it. Because when I solve for B, I can, instead of dividing a fraction, multiply the reciprocal. So this is going to be 5 over 6. A quick way of doing multiplying by fractions is you take that big number right there, the whole number, divide it by the denominator. So that's going to be 24. And then multiply it to that 5, which is going to be 120. So B trees are 120. Yeah. The table above lists the lengths to the nearest inch of a random sample of 21 brown bullhead fish. All right, so someone measured a bunch of fish. They got like 8, 9, 9, 9, blah, 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 16, and then somebody got a 24. Look at you. The outlier measurement is 24. Oh, and it's an error. Figures. Of the mean, median, and range of the values listed, which will change the most if the 24-inch measurement is removed from the data? Well, if I remove, first off, the median will not change. Okay, the median is the guy in the middle. So the guy in the middle of this entire chart is a 12 and a group of 12s. That won't change. The mean will change, but if you're thinking all of a sudden I have this big fish amongst 20 other fish, the mean will go down if I remove 24 slightly. So the mean will change. But we're talking about a difference of 8 inches here, 8 inches over 21. You're talking about the mean changing less than an inch. However, if I change the range, which is the biggest number minus the smallest number, I right now have 24 minus 8, which means my range is 16. If I remove the 24, that range is now cut in half. It's a change of 8. So my range is absolutely 100% going to be the thing that changes the most. Okay, when you have an outlier, the median should not change, or it won't change that much. If you have an outlier, the mean will change, but an outlier changes the range the most in pretty much any circumstance, no matter what, hands down. In the xy plane, if 0, 0 is a solution to the system of inequalities above, which of the following relationships between A and B must be true? All right, so 0, 0 is a solution. So basically, I'm looking at a system of inequalities where I'm going to shade, and I need both of my shadings to include 0, 0. All right, so this is how I'm going to look at this guy. Y is less than negative x plus a is going to look like a dashed line where I shade in everything underneath. All right? So if I have a dash line where I have to shade in everything underneath, so dash line where I shade in everything underneath, and I have to include 0, 0 as a solution, 0, 0 has to be somewhere in my shading, then my dashed line is going to look something like that, which means in this case, A, because that would be A, my y-intercept, A has to be positive. So that's one thing I'm going to say. A has to be positive if I'm going to shade underneath that line, and I must include 0, 0. What else do I have? I have y is greater than x plus b, where x is a positive slope. So I have a slope that looks like this. It's a dashed line once again. X looks like that. I'm shading above the line, and 0, 0 has to be somewhere in that above the line. So basically, 0, 0 has to be included. I'm going to have a dashed line that looks like that, right? So if that's B, B has to be negative. So A is positive, B is negative no matter what. Now, if these were equal to, then these guys could go through the origin. But since they're not equal to, it's got to be this. A has to be positive and B has to be negative, which means A has to be bigger than B is true. B has to be bigger than A is not. The absolute values don't matter because this would, no matter what, would turn that positive. That's true. And A has to be the negative version of B. That's not true. I can choose any B down here. So what has to be the case is A has to be greater than B no matter what. None of the others will work. Weird. It's a weird one. Didn't like it. If the system of inequalities, that one and that one, is graphed in the xy plane, which quadrant contains no solutions to the system? All right, so we have ourselves a nice little fake coordinate plane here that I'm going to use. I'm going to graph this guy in red, and I'm not going to alter this. I'm not going to mark anything off. I know that if this is 2x plus 1, it's going to have a positive y-axis and a positive slope, so it's going to look something like that. Since it's greater than or equal to, I care about shading everything above it, which is going to look a little something like this. I should have chosen a thicker highlighter. Story of my life. Don't know what that means. But anyway, there you go. Okay? So there you go. Still working on it. Still working on that. Still working on coloring. All right, so that's what this guy is going to look like. What this guy is going to look like, and let me change colors here in blue, is I have another positive slope, but a negative y-intercept. So it's going to, and I don't include the line, which is really not going to matter. But I have that going on. Okay. And if I shade that in, I shade above the line, which is going to look a little something like this, a little something like this. And it's asking me which of the quadrants contains no solutions. Well, so there's going to be solutions here for sure, but no solutions to the system itself is going to be quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 has no solutions to the system. Now, the system is contained within this chunk right here where both colors meet. Okay? This has solutions to one of the lines. That has solutions to one of the lines. This has solutions to both of the lines, but this area right here has no solutions whatsoever at all, and it never will. So it's going to be quadrant 4. Kind of fun. Kind of fun problem. The speed of a sound wave in air depends on the air temperature. Neat. The formula above shows the relationship between A, which is the speed of the sound wave, so A is speed, and T, the air temperature, so T is temperature. At which of the following air temperatures will the speed of the sound wave be closest to 1,000 feet per second? All right, so essentially what I'm doing is I need to find a T that if I were to plug in 1,000 for A, it works out. Two ways that I could do this. I could plug all four of these in, but this problem falls in the no calculator section of the SAT practice exam problem. So I'm not going to go crazy plugging all of these in, because the last thing I really want to do is try to find out what 46 times 1.08 is, and then try it again, then try it again, then try it again. So I'm going to replace A with 1,000 and solve for T, knowing very well that it's just probably going to involve long division and some not fun, math stuff going on. So I'm going to rewrite this guy, but instead of A, I'm going to have 1,000. That's going to equal 1052 plus 1.08T. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 1,052 from both sides, minus 1,052 from both sides. Goodbye. That gives me negative 52 equals 1.08T. Now I divide both sides by 1.08, and that's going to require a little bit of long division. All right? So let me write that out here. I have 1.08. I know it's negative, so I'm not going to put negative. I'm going to put 52.00, and maybe that double O is too much. Probably only needed one O, but that's all right. I like secret agents. Double O it is. How many times does 1.08 go into 52? I would say, let me try this 48, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I have a hunch. I didn't do this ahead of time, I promise. I'm going to try the 48, see what happens. All right. All right, so now what I have to do is multiply 48 to 1.08. So that's going to, 48 times 08, that's going to be 51.84. Gross. But what I did here is I found out that that's actually what I want. So that's going to end up being 0.16. So 48.16, 48 is definitely the closest. So if it was like 0.5 something, then I would go with the 49, but it ain't. So it's negative 48. That's the guy I want. That worked out quite nicely. Oh, hooray. Oof. Annual budgets for different programs in Kansas. Which of the following best approximates the average rate of change in the annual budget for agricultural natural sciences? So that's that guy from 2008 to 2010. So average rate of change is basically found by taking the slope using what you want over a specific period of time. So there is a formula, and I don't know if maybe everybody has this memorized. I don't know if this is too far into calculus land, but there's a formula that says average rate of change is found by taking f of b minus f of a over b minus a. Now, what this means is, in our case, if we're doing an estimate, which is what we're doing, this would be my A and B would be my years 2008 and 2010. My f of A would be that number right there. My f of b would be that number right there. But they want us to average things out. So I'm going to use the numbers that I think are appropriate. These are b. That's A. So f of b would be, I'm going to go with, let's round up to 490K. All right. I know that this is K, and I know that this is another K, so we're going to end up in the millions here. But it doesn't really matter. Minus 360. Let's go up to 360. Okay. That is going to be over the year 2010 minus 2008. So what we have is 130 over 2, which is 65. Now, I use 490 when I choose 490K. So let's throw another 1,000 on there. And these are done in thousands of dollars. So let's throw another 1,000 on there. And we have ourselves 65 mil. Kansas, that's a lot of money. Oof, annual budgets for different programs in Kansas. Which of the following best approximates the average rate of change in the annual budget for agricultural natural sciences? So that's that guy from 2008 to 2010. So average rate of change is basically found by taking the slope using what you want over a specific period of time. So there's a formula, and I don't know if maybe everybody has this memorized. I don't know if this is too far into calculus land, but there's a formula that says average rate of change is found by taking f of b minus f of a over b minus a. Now, what this means is in our case, if we're doing an estimate, which is what we're doing, this would be my A and B would be my years 2008 and 2010. My F of A would be that number right there. My F of B would be that number right there. But they want us to average things out. So I'm going to use the numbers that I think are appropriate. These are B. That's A. So F of B would be, I'm going to go with, let's round up to 490K. All right. I know that this is K, and I know that this is another K, so we're going to end up in the millions here. But it doesn't really matter. Minus 360. Let's go up to 360. Okay. That is going to be over the year 2010 minus 2008. So what we have is 130 over 2, which is 65. Now, I used 490 when I choose 490K, so let's throw another 1,000 on there. And these are done in thousands of dollars, so let's throw another 1,000 on there. And we have ourselves 65 mil. Kansas, that's a lot of money. Annual budgets for different programs in Kansas on the following, which program's ratio of its 2007 budget to its 2010 budget is closest to the human resources program's ratio of its 2000 budget to its 2000. All right, this is gross. So let's take a look at what we're comparing everything to. Human resources ratio compared to 2007 to 2010. Lots of estimating here. Human resources 2007 was 4 million. 2010, 6 million. So I need a ratio that's awfully close to 2/3. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to compare 2007 and 2010 to 2/3, and I need to do just these four. So agriculture to natural resources, I'm doing 07 to 010, so I can probably get away with doing, oh man, let's just do it. Let's see what we could do in our heads and get as close to 2/3 as we can. So I have 37 over 49. We'll round up. All right, 37 over 49. All right, education. Education is 2 million. I like it already. I like it already. I like it already. Highways and transportation is going to be 14 to 17, so that's not really close. And then public safety is going to be 26 to 48. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the thing closest to 2/3 is the one that was also 2/3, and that was education. Very bizarre problem Very bizarre problem, but that's the SATs for you. Lots of bizarre. Which of the following numbers is not a solution of the inequality as shown right there? All right, so fun fact, it's either going to be u or it's going to be u. It can't be the guys in between if you have just a greater than or equal to symbol. So we can eliminate those guys right off the bat. But, let's solve this. Instead of trying to plug things in, let's just solve it. It's very straightforward. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides, minus 3x minus 3x. This is super convenient because what it leaves me with as far as x's go is just a regular x minus 3. If I add 3, I add 3. That gives me negative 2 has got to be greater than or equal to x. I like to view it with my variable to the left. So x is less than or equal to negative 2. So my solutions are x is less than or equal to 2. If I were to view that on a number line, so this is an unnecessary step, but if I were to view this on a number line, this is a very, very, very simple, very basic number line. My solutions would include negative 2. Fill that in because it does count and go everything to the left. So my solutions for this particular inequality is negative 2 and negative 3 and negative 4. So my not solutions, which is what I want, the answers that wouldn't work would be negative 1, 0, anything that's a decimal, so negative 1.5, all of those. But what's most important for this problem is negative 1 is not a solution because it's just not. Again, I know these two don't even make sense because if I'm trying to find my solutions to an inequality, why would I put anything that's in between a negative 1 and a negative 5 there? So right off the bat, I knew that that wouldn't be it. But I got my answer. Fun. Alma bought a laptop computer at a store that gave a 20% discount off of its original price. The total amount she paid was P dollars, including 8% sales tax on the discounted price. Okay, which of the following represents the original price in terms of P? So a lot going on here. So let's just say that the original price is X. If you buy something that's 20% off, you take away 20% of X, which leaves you with 80% of X. That's how much you pay. So we will say that the price we paid is going to be 0.8X. On top of that, you have to pay sales tax, which is 0.08 because 8% is 0.08 of that 80%. So you're paying 0.08 of 0.8x. That's awful. On top of 0.8x. So I'm looking at what they have here, and I'm trying to figure out how they want me to. I have to combine these guys, but it's kind of like they don't want me to combine them. Eventually, I have to solve for this x here. So let me see what they kind of want me to do. If I solve for x, right, because I should be able to combine these, but they don't want me to, or do they? I don't know. I mean, it's definitely not these guys. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out an x. Let me just do that. Factor out an x. P equals x times, and I can also factor out a 0.8. So let me try that. I'm going to factor out a 0.8x. May not be the best way of doing it, but I'm doing it. If I do that, that leaves me with 1 plus 0.08, which is, look at that, I figured it out, which is 0.8x 1.08. If I divide both sides by 0.8 and 1.08, that leaves x all by itself. So my answer is D. So I used a different way of doing this. And a theme in my problems, some of my problems, is it may not be the best way to do it, but, it works out. Most of the time it works out. This time it did. A food truck sells salads for $6.50 each and drinks for $2 each, and the food truck's revenue from selling a total of 209 things is $836.50. How many salads were sold that day? All right, so no way of getting cute here. I have a system of equations that I have to deal with. Whenever you have a system of equations and it gives you a total amount that you sell or use or whatever, and it also gives you a price, you're going to write an equation based off of how much everything cost and its total cost and how much total you dealt with. So what I have is I have salads are $6.50 each, so 6.5 per salad plus $2 per drink. That's a D, is going to equal, how much should I spend? $836.50. The other equation that I use is going to be your total amount of objects. So S, salads, plus D, drinks, is going to be 209. So either way, no matter what I do, I have to solve a system of equations here. But I'm going to be clever. I only care about how many salads we sold. So at the end of the day, I want to say S equals blah, 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 blah. Now, you might look at this and say, I have something that looks like elimination might not be the worst idea, but this is part of the no calculator section. What I'm going to do is if I want to solve for salads, I'm going to solve this bottom one for D. And you might be thinking, that doesn't make sense. It sure does. If I solve this bottom one for D and plug it into the top equation, then that gives me nothing but S's. And if I have nothing but S's, I can solve for salads, bada bing. So if I take this bottom equation, subtract out S, I now have D equals 209 minus S. I take that equation and I pop it into the top equation. So 6.5S plus 2, I'm going to replace the D with what I found here, 209, so parentheses, 209 minus S. Make sure your S's don't look like 5s because mine often do. Close the parentheses, equals 836.5. I now have distributive property I have to deal with, so let me get that out of the way. That becomes 418 minus 2S. The 6.5S still just drops down, comes along for the ride. That's going to equal 836.5. Okay. Can I combine like terms? Sure can. I've got 8.5S minus 2S, so I've got 4.5S. And while I'm at it, I'm going to, in my head, subtract 418 from both sides. So if I subtract 418 from 836, that's going to become 418.5. So I have to get S all by itself. I do that by dividing both sides by 4.5. Divide both sides by 4.5. And if you're an estimator, then you already know what the answer is. But I'm actually just going to do the old traditional long division method, right? Which looks like that. So I'm going to go with 93 on this one. You hear my dog ringing a bell in the background. 93 times 4.5 is going to be 418.5. So there you have it. Which of the following is an equivalent form of the equation of the graph shown in the xy plane above, right here, from which the coordinates of vertex A can be identified as constants in the equation? Okay. So basically, as much as it's tempting to factor this out, And if I factor this out, I would get that guy right there. I'm supposed to have a marker. I would get that guy right there. That's the temptation. That's not what it wants me to do. What it wants me to do is essentially use vertex form. And vertex form looks like this. Y equals A times the quantity x minus h squared plus k, where hk is the vertex. It doesn't want me to come up with just some random equation that will work. It's requiring me to use the vertex A as constant. So these guys are out of the question, especially that one, because that one's not even right. But it's got to be one of these two. And the vertex is 1, -16 because it sinks a little bit below. So it looks like it's got to be that guy. But if we could safely identify that the vertex is 1, -16, I can see the -16 now. I could just substitute stuff in and I get y equals, I don't know, who cares, x minus h, which is -1 squared, plus a -16, which is -16. So the temptation is to say A, but because of the way the last sentence is worded, it's going to be D. This problem is certified garbanzo beans, and here's why. A square field measures all this. 10 students mark off blah, blah, blah. Each region is 1 meter, blah, blah, and no two regions overlap. And on top of that, they dig 5 centimeters beneath the ground surface. The results are shown. And then it gives us all this information. So it paints this picture that you basically have a 10 by 10 meter chunk of space, and then a bunch of kids just kind of mark off certain things. These are each 1 by 1 meter. They're also 5 centimeters deep. And then all of this information, this kid right here found 107 worms, and this kid found 147, blah, blah, blah. Which of the following is a reasonable approximation of the number of earthworms to a depth of 5 centimeters beneath the ground surface in the entire field? So after looking at this whole nightmare of a problem, this whole nightmare of a scenario, none of it matters, and all you do is kind of add these guys up. So we have like 100-ish, and then 150, 150, 140, then 150, and then 150-ish, and then 150-ish, and then 150-ish, and then 150-ish, like 150-ish worms 10 times, which means we're going to get 1,500 worms approximately. What a stupid problem. I hated that. I hated that so much. Which of the following is an equation of a circle in the xy plane with a center 0, 4 and a radius of n.4 5? Oh, you can tell by the giggle that this is not going to be that much fun, or it's going to be a lot of fun. This is the equation of a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. The h and the k represent the center of your circle. So there's my h, there's my k. Okay, so I've got x minus 0 squared plus y minus 4 squared. That's going to equal r squared. All right, so I don't need that minus 0 part. And so usually right around this point, once I clean this up a little bit, I see if I can cut some corners and I can get rid of u and I can get rid of u. But unfortunately, I can't just look at this and be like happy with what I came up with so far. I'm going to have to find the nightmare that is the radius. My radius is going to be the distance between that point and that point. So I am going to use the distance formula. D equals big square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. It doesn't really matter which is which. I'll call you x sub 1, y sub 1. I'll call you x sub 2, y sub 2. So my distance, or in this case my radius, because my distance is my radius, is going to be x sub 2, which I called 4/3, minus 0 squared, plus y sub 2, which I called 5, minus 4. Ooh, 5 minus 4, I can handle that. Let's simplify a little bit more. I've got 4/3 minus 0, which is 4/3, so I have 4/3 squared plus 5 minus 4, let me get my abacus out, 1 squared. So you become 4 squared is 16, 3 squared is 9, and 1 squared is 1. But instead of writing out 1, since I want to add these guys, let's turn that 1 into 9/9. That gives me 25/9 in a square root, which does simplify. But I'm not going to do that. My radius is 25/9 inside a square root. If I rewrite that equation out here and write out everything that I'm supposed to, x squared plus y minus 4 squared is going to equal my radius, which I found to be the square root of 25/9 squared. The square root and the squareds cancel each other out. So last but not least, my final answer is going to be x squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 25/9, because my squared and the square root cancel each other out. There you go. There you go. Woo! The equation above expresses the approximate height in meters of a ball t seconds after it is launched vertically upward from the ground with an initial velocity of 25 meters per second. All right, so when I see this guy, okay, I see a polynomial with a degree of 2. So this is a quadratic. And when a quadratic is graphed, it creates a U shape, a parabola. Now, whatever the first term is in a quadratic is going to determine the direction of a parabola. This is negative, which means when I graph this, this happens. All right? Now, most importantly, there's no number attached here. So if you're wondering, well, where does this launch from? It launches from the origin. So when graphed, this starts at 0, 0, okay, and ends somewhere, but I know it's going to be somewhere 0. That somewhere is going to be where my, what is this, rocket? A ball. There it is. It took me a long time. So you launch it, it goes up, it comes down, and it lands somewhere around there. So I have to find where it lands. In other words, I have to find what happens when my height is 0. All right, so let's do that. Let's set the height to 0. And since we're talking about words like approximately, I'm going to turn that negative 4.9 into negative 5. Why am I doing that? Well, if I make that negative 5t squared plus 25t, so if I factor out a negative 5t, that leaves me with a t minus 5. Using something called the zero product property, I have something times something equals 0, which means each of these somethings have to be 0. So this will give me a time of 0. And if I were to set t minus 5 equal to 0, and I'll quick do that right over here because why not? And if I add 5 to both sides, I get t equals 0. So t equals 5. So 5 is the other option. So what this is telling me is that time 0 is where it hits the ground because, that's where I'm starting from. And then time 5 is where it lands on the ground. So my other option is going to be 5 seconds. So by setting it up this way, I am saying that the 2 moments where the height of my ball is 0 is going to be at 0 seconds, and at 5 seconds, my answer is 5. This looks like it isn't going to be that much fun. Dreams recalled during 1 week. All right, so you got two different groups. Some people have 1 to 4 dreams during a week, 5 or more, blah, 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 blah. Nice round numbers with the hundreds. We'll see what happens. The data in the table above were produced by a sleep researcher studying the number of dreams people recall and asked recall. Group X consisted of 100 people who observed early bedtimes. Group Y consisted of 100 people who observed later bedtimes. If a person is chosen at random from those who recalled at least one dream, what is the probability that the person belonged to group Y? All right, so the way I view this is from the group of people that recalled one dream excludes that group. So let me actually get rid of that. That's how I'm viewing it. If a person is chosen at random from those who recalled at least one dream, so you don't matter. You don't matter. Which removes a bunch of people from my total. So now my total is 164. If that indeed is what I have to do. What is the probability that the person belonged to group Y? Group Y is this. So you have either 11 or 68, which is going to be 79 out of 164. So that would be C. Not bad. A group of 10th grade students responded to a survey that asked which math course they were currently enrolled in. So I can see that males and females, and then they were either in Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, the old AGA. Which of the following categories accounts for approximately 19% of all the survey respondents? So I'm viewing this again without a calculator. I do not have a calculator, but I look at these problems the moment I do them. I've never seen this problem before. So this is how my brain works for this problem. I see a grand total of 310, and I need 19% of 310. So that's what I need, 19% of 310. What I would do here is I would multiply 0.19 times 310 and see what number that gives me. All right, so this is just straight up old multiplication. So I have whatever multiplication you use. I'm in my 30s, 20s, 30s. And so I would just do 0 times 9. Okay, so that doesn't count. Skip to the next thing. I have 1 times 19. Then the double 0. That gives me a 7 there. Carry the 2. Boom. All right, so after doing old-fashioned multiplication, I end up with 58. Don't forget the decimal 0.9. So I need 58.9 children, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You can't take 90% of each child. I mean, you could, but why would you? So I'm looking for a 59. Ooh. So I want male geometry. So does that mean females taking geometry? No, that number is way too small. Do I want females taking algebra 2? Close. Close. But I don't like it. Do I want males taking geometry? I sure do. But do I want males taking algebra 1? I certainly don't. That number is way too low. So the old-fashioned way, just doing multiplication and not trying to do too much in my head, seemed to be the best way to go. Done. For a polynomial p of x, the value of p of 3 is -2. Which of the following must be true about p of x? I look at this and I kind of view this as something using a remainder theorem. If you remember anything about synthetic division has you take something that looks like this and has a bunch of numbers, and if you end up with a remainder, that remainder comes from you taking what is originally a factor. So at some point, I divided a factor, or just this guy, x minus 3, and got -2. And this comes from the idea of the remainder theorem that P of 3 is going to be inside here because 3 minus 3 is 0. So it's like a mix of all of these like zero product properties, remainder theorem, synthetic division. But this ends up being D because of the concept of a remainder theorem, which deals with dividing factors from polynomials. Kind of weird. Wyatt can husk at least 12 dozen ears of corn per hour and at most 18 dozen ears of corn per hour. So what is the possible amount of time in hours that it could take Wyatt, a possible amount of time, okay, that it could take Wyatt to husk 72 dozen ears of corn. So worst case scenario is he can only do 12 dozen ears of corn per hour. So that's going to be 72 divided by 12, which is going to be 6 ears of corn, or that's going to be 6 hours rather. Sorry, not ears of corn, but 6 hours it could take. But if he's having a good day, he can do all 72 of them over the span, or 18 per hour, which is going to be 72 before. So there's an infinite amount of answers here, but it's saying what is a possible amount of time in hours that it could take Wyatt. Well, it could take him 4, it could take him 6, it could take him 4.5, it could take him 5.5. I'm just going to say 5. But really anything before 5 and 6, and technically including 5 and 6, will be acceptable, but that's probably the most common answer that one would give. The posted weight limit for a covered wooden bridge in Pennsylvania is 600 pounds. 6,000 pounds. My goodness. A delivery truck that is carrying X identical boxes, each weighing 14 pounds, will pass over the bridge. If the combined weight of the empty delivery truck and its driver is 4,500 pounds, what is the maximum possible value for X that will keep the combined weight of everything below the weight limit? All right, so I've got below. Technically, it says below and not equal to, so I was tempted to put less than or equal to 6,000 pounds, but it says below. So if I'm going to be honest, I'm going to put less than 6,000 pounds. I have a truck and a man or woman that weighs 4,500, and I'm carrying a bunch of boxes that are 14 pounds per box. So I'm going to subtract 4,500. Remember, when you solve for an inequality, you solve like a regular old equation like that. So that's 14x is less than 1,500. Divide by 14, divide by 14. And I don't know what that is, so we got to kind of go off to the side here and do good old-fashioned long division. So 14 goes into 1,500. We're going to start out by saying 1. 1 times 14 is 14. Subtract, you get 1, bring down the 10. 14 doesn't go into 10 at all, so we'll put the 0 there. But 14 goes into 100, I believe, 7 times. So 7 times 4 is 28. Carry the 2. 7 times 1 is 7 times 9. All right, so yeah, that's it. So that's what we want. So we're going to get set 107 point blah, 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 blah. And I don't even care what the blah, 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 blah is, because I have to keep it at 107 or lower. So my answer is going to be 107 boxes. Now, if you're wondering, like, well, what about the decimal? Well, there is no decimal because we're not going to take like 1/10 of a box and cut like a box up and try to carry it over a bridge, especially if it says we can't even hit 6,000. So just to be on the safe side, 107 boxes will do the job. So X has got to be less than 107 point something, which means 107 boxes will do the job. According to the line graph above, the number of portable media players sold in 2008 is what fraction of the number sold in 2011? All right, so 2008 appears to be 100 on the dot. So 100 is what fraction of whatever was sold in 2011. Where's 2011? 2011 appears to be 1600. So we'll do x times, for what fraction? 1600. We got to get x all by itself, so I'm going to divide by 160. I'm going to divide 160. And that simplifies to 5/8. So 100 is 5/8 of 160. Not bad. Pretty easy. A local television station sells time slots for programs in 30-minute intervals. If the station operates 24 hours per day, every day of the week, what is the total number of 30-minute time slots the station can sell for Tuesday and Wednesday? So we've got 2 days, 30-minute intervals, 24 hours a day. So 30-minute intervals is going to be 2 of those intervals per hour, which means per day is going to be 2 times 24, which is 48. I care about Tuesday and Wednesday, which is 48 times 2, which is 96. And that's it. A dairy farmer uses a storage silo that is in the shape of the right cylinder above. If the volume of the silo is 72 pi cubic yards, what is the diameter of the base of the cylinder in yards? All right, so the formula that I like to use is V equals pi r squared h, and that is the volume of a cylinder. So it tells me right there that the volume is 72 pi. That's going to equal pi r squared h, and it gives us h is 8, which is height. So this is what I can do. I can immediately get rid of the pi on the left and the pi on the right because they will both divide out. If I divide both sides by 8, I get 9 on the left, and that equals r squared on the right. In order to get r all by itself, I take the square root of both sides, and this is only going to be a positive 3. Now, before you circle that and call it a day, they don't want the radius. They want the diameter. And so that would be the radius. That would be the diameter. So the diameter is twice that. So we're working with 6, what do I have here? Yards, 6 yards. And that's it. As the thing on top of my pen falls off, I can't complete the circle. There we go. For what value of x is the function h above undefined? Undefined occurs when you have a fraction and the bottom of a fraction somehow gives you 0. That equals undefined. You're never allowed to divide by 0. So this is what I'm going to do. I am looking at this guy right here, and what I see is I see x minus 5 in common in the first 2 terms. So I'm just going to make believe that a is x minus 5, just as a placeholder, so I can write this out. I need to find when that entire bottom is 0. So if I write it out as a squared plus 4a plus 4 equals 0, then I have myself a zero product property problem. This is actually a perfect square. So this becomes a plus 2 squared equals 0. Now, I'm not just going to say -2 and I'm done, because my job is not to solve for a. My job is to solve for x. And what was a? X minus 5. So I'm going to go back and replace a with x minus 5. So I have that. That becomes x minus 3 squared. And I have a double root where x cannot be 3. So the question is, for what value of x is the function h above undefined when x is 3, and that's the only one because I had a perfect square trinomial. Jessica opened a bank account that earns 2% interest compounded annually. Her initial deposit was $100, and she uses the expression 100 times x to the t to find the value of her account after 2 years. What value is t in this expression? All right, so this is the equation that immediately pops into my head. Whether you have this memorized or not, it's completely up to you, but this is the compound interest formula. You have your initial amount, p is the principal, 1 plus r over n to the nt. Now, I know I'm doing more than necessary, but if you're wondering why all of this is going to make sense, I am going to do more than necessary. Okay, 2% is going to be 0.02, and that's going to be my rate. Okay, her initial deposit was 100, so that's going to be my principal. She uses the expression who cares to find the value of the account after 2 years. Okay, so t is still t. And if it's compounded annually, that means n, the number of times it's compounded within that time slot, is going to be 1. So I have, let's plug in what I know. I have a equals my principal, which is 100. I knew that already, plus, or times rather, 1 plus my rate, which is 0.02 over 1 to the 1 times t, which is t. So that becomes a equals 100 times 1 plus 0.02 divided by 1 is 0.02 to the t, and that becomes 100 times 1.02 to the t. So what is the value of x? 1.02. So again, I did a little bit more than necessary, but that's because I wanted to show you why all of this will work out just fine.